John is on the channel. Can we hear you, John? Yep. Should be able. Okay, we can hear you. Good, thank you. Everybody good? Call to order? All right. I was asked to read this page, so I'm going to read the page. As you are all aware, public forums have been difficult this season, resulting in candidates being reluctant to speak their position publicly. Information sometimes is distorted on social media, resulting in more confusion about what is the truth, what's the true issue. If we are successful with this forum here, we hope that we might be able to do this in the future election seasons and have all candidates participate, even the incumbents. We have set up our format aims to encourage information sharing and questions from voters and avoid disrespectful speech, cheering, or booing. Each candidate is going to speak for up to 5 minutes, focus on what they want to do. No comments other than the candidates at that time. The audience can write their questions on the 3x5 cards that are provided in the back of the room. These will be collected, given to myself, Dan Proctor, I'll introduce myself in a minute, who will read them if the question is directed to one person. They answer first, and then collectively the other people can give comments for up to 2 minutes. Direct questions will not be taken from the audience. Please use the cards. There will be no crosstalk. We are not allowed to interrupt the candidate who is speaking until their time is up. Okay? But we'll be the ones interrupting the time. Tori is our timekeeper. Okay? So they have 5 minutes to introduce themselves. They have no time doing her thing. There will be no cross-talk. Please, no outbursts from the audience. Otherwise, you will be asked to leave. Feel free to write comments about how this went on the 3x5 cards, also including recommendations that might improve this event for future elections.
Other than the heat, we know about it.
Yes. So at this time, I'm going to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Proctor. I grew up in South Lima on Garden Street, which is the Lima side of Garden Street. And I now live in the village on Michigan Avenue. I love Lima. I've lived here for 53 years. That's about how old I am, give or take, okay? So, and I see people in the audience here today that I grew up with their kids. So, I appreciate y'all being here. And even some younger folks are here. So I think that this is going to be a great event. And I do wish that all the candidates were here today, but they're not. We can only take our questions from the people that are here. So, what I'm going to do is each candidate, we're going to start off with Adam Lewis, who's sitting here at the table. Tori, is the orange light or green light on the microphone?
Orange.
Press the button once, just a quick push, and it turns green.
Test.
There you go.
If you can hear me.
Adam, 5 minutes. Introduce yourself in a couple of sentences, the position you're running for, why you're running, and if you win, what your top 3 things are that you hope to accomplish, and your best visit of Lima in 10 years.
Go.
Okay. I'm going to speak here, so hopefully it answers a lot of those questions. It's been my esteemed privilege to have the opportunity to speak with so many of you Lima residents over the last few months, along with all of you here this afternoon. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Adam Lewis. I'm running as a writing candidate for Lima Town Board. I love living in this rural agricultural community, and if elected, I would like to make sure that there's balance between maintaining its charm and bringing in respectful business to help offset the burden of taxpayers. Lima has so much to offer, and I think with some better marketing strategies, I believe we can help to make people more aware of that. We have a lot of commercial space available on 15A and 5 and 20 that I would like to see capitalized while still maintaining our agricultural heritage. I believe that Lima EMS is valuable and worth funding. I believe our first step is to look at the proposed budget and see where money can be reallocated from. Back in the day, the ambulance was largely sponsored by fundraisers. While times have changed, I still believe in the kindness of the people of this town and their willingness to give. I think fundraisers are still productive, and I'd like to take a look at easier ways for the ambulance to be able to accept donations, perhaps having them register as a non-for-profit. In addition, looking at better incentive packages for the volunteers may help to increase the number of those who are available and help with their response to the midweek calls that seem to be the difficulty right now. I'm also not opposed to the currently being discussed plan for paid part-time EMT and drivers from a third-party company. Topics like this require collaboration, outside-the-box thinking, and openness to try new strategies. Ultimately, the final say should fall upon the Lima residents. Just like in my opinion with the water district, that I was not, and am still not against, just to clarify any erroneous lies that are going on out there. I believe the Lima ambulance should go to a referendum vote, where the people of the village and town vote on whether or not we'd like to save it. As a democratic republic, I believe it is the job of elected officials to give the power back to the people whenever possible, as opposed to making the decisions for them. The Revolutionary War was fought because colonists were being taxed without representation, and I stand here before you this afternoon saying that if elected, I will always represent you as the taxpayers. I was born and raised in this great town of Lima. I grew up playing Red Wilson baseball, participating in the Lima Boy Scouts, participating in the original pumpkin growing contest that was held at Centennial's Farm Market. I remember shopping at Big M and marching in the Kitty Davis Parade back when it was held at Conway's Old Farm. I'm a fourth-generation resident, and my sister is currently raising my nephew as a fifth generation. My grandfather was a fire chief for the Lima Fire Department, and I come from a long line of farmers. During the caucus and during my latest campaign efforts, I've run into so many people that have told me that they knew my grandparents, Bud and Helene Garland. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to meet my grandpa as he passed away before I was born. But everyone I speak to, and I mean everyone, describes him the exact same way, as a kind and gentle man. Who would do anything for you. Whether I win or lose this election, I want to be remembered the same way. I want to serve my town as he did, and I want my neighbors to be able to call me and know that I'll be there for them. As you make your decisions about who to cast your votes for, I want you to vote with your hearts, not because somebody knocked on your door and told you to vote for a certain candidate. Anytime you vote, it creates a hash mark on the timeline of history, and this election is no different.
1 minute.
If you want the option for leadership change in this town, this is your time to make history. Each and every time you cast your vote is important, and it contains power. Before you cast your votes, I want you to really think about the candidates you select and what is best for the longevity of this town and their effect that they may have on it. I personally believe that what John Cates and I are doing as writing candidates is the true definition of democracy. Respected individuals from this town have come to us and asked us to run. The support that we have behind us is a great example of what people can do when they come together and fight for something that they believe in.
15 seconds.
We have created a storm of momentum that has echoed throughout this town. United as one, we possess the power to unleash a torrent of passion, grit, and will that will conquer any opposition. So let the doubters doubt, let the skeptics scoff, because that outside noise means nothing. The only thing that matters is our faith in each other, our conviction, our purpose, our resolve. Can I see one from you?
Get out.
How much more time do you need to finish?
3 seconds.
Give it to me. Our conviction, our purpose, our resolve, rising is one, fighting is one, and leaving our mark on destiny again. Thank you. Our next candidate is Christopher Dow, and Chris can tell you about himself.
Thank you guys for coming in today. I'm Christopher Doe. I was born in Danville, and in second grade, my mom moved in with my grandparents in Hood Falls, but I came to Lima School District. Once we got our first apartment, it was in Lima here, and I've been in Lima for just about my whole life. Me and Kelly lived out in the city during our college years for a little while. Lima is a town that deserves so much more than it's getting. We have people that just seem to go through the motions. I think that we can put a lot more effort into what we're doing if we market the community much better, like Adam was saying. Lima Live, my website that I've started has grown to almost 300 followers so far. It's only been about 60 days that it's existed. All it is there for is to promote Lima. It's everything about the businesses, the community outreaches, the libraries programs. We need people that are active and want to be enthusiastic about Lima, because that's going to draw other people's enthusiasm about it. We need a much stronger unity. Right now, we have the highway department, the EMS. People are afraid for the library. There is so much that just simple sitting down and speaking to one another. And that is something that certain people in our government don't seem to want to do right now. They don't want to be accountable. They certainly don't seem enthusiastic that I'm videoing any of the meetings and broadcasting them so that more people are active.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? What are you going to do? That's what we're here for today. We're not talking about other people, we're talking about what we're going to do to help those issues first. Thank you.
As far as EMS, I am a member of it. I am actively talking to the members. The village and the town right now are not unified. It is very easy for the town members to meet with the village. And it doesn't have to be during a meeting that's set up. We can do that. It's very easy to have these kind of meetings where you just invite the public. That's what I want to do. I want to bring the public to meetings to speak to one another. We need more unity through actual conversations. It shouldn't be once a month. To bring up more and more of the issues that actually bother you guys. I've been door to door. Everybody has something that's bothering them. They don't have just one night a month to show up. We can do better for them. That's what I want to do. Be a more active member on your town board. Okay, that's all.
All right, thank you, Christopher. Is it Amy? Amy! Town Justice, right?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Amy Cope, for those of you who don't know me. You may recall me from years ago when I ran for the town board. I think I knocked on every door of every active voter in the community at that time so that I could reach you all. But to give a refresh, I am a community member for the past 20 to 55 years. I moved here when I fell in love with an Army officer who had recently left the military, and we decided we wanted to have a family and live in a community that was supportive and rural and represented values that we had been brought up with. I am a lifelong Democrat. That being said, I believe that no judicial position should ever be determined on political courage. I am a 30-year experienced courtroom attorney. I have represented interests in federal court. I have practiced in the second highest courts in the lands of this country. I'm admitted in all those courts, and I have that experience. I think what I can bring to the community is an understanding and a depth to that understanding of the law to be able to best serve this community. When I became an attorney 30 years ago, part of our ethical code is to provide a good service to the community in the best way that we know how. In my 30 years, I have provided service to this community as a youth coach for approximately 10 years, a Girl Scout leader for the same amount of time, and I'm looking to serve you. I'm looking to do the best for my community. In the law, I seek out people who have had their constitutional rights violated, who need resources, who perhaps are up against it and have nowhere to turn and can't afford an attorney. And I provide pro bono services in addition to the paid work that I do. I make that a regular part of my practice. Being a courtroom attorney who's had the opportunity to practice before judges who by and large are selected by a community based on their political party rather than their experience and what they can bring to the table, I have a particular viewpoint that I can share with you. Making a decision based on a political party doesn't bring you the best candidate to the position. If you want a candidate who can best serve, you need someone who understands the law and isn't learning it in the office. What I want for this community is to have everyone who would come before me as a judge to feel that they were being fairly and respectfully treated, that the rule of law would be followed without any influence outside of what is going on in that courtroom, and that everyone there believes that they were treated appropriately well. So that is what I'm looking to do. I truly am not doing this because I want to feather in my cap or because I need it or because I have all kinds of extra time I want to burn. I am trying to give back to my community. If you don't want me, that's your choice. But I can tell you that I would serve well, I would serve hard, and I would serve fairly, and I would bring to this position the strength and experience of 30 years. So I do look forward to voting to serve in this community if you give me the opportunity to do so.
Mr. Huff, we're going to give the microphone to you.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming out today. My name is Ron Huff. I've been a community member for the last 20 years. I live over on Rainbow Lane. 3 out of my 4 kids grew up and went through the Plain Falls school system, which is one of the reasons why we moved over here. We used to live in York. I grew up in Monday, but I like Livingston County resident. Out of high school, I went to college for criminal justice and police science. Shortly thereafter, I joined the sheriff's office. I put in 27 years there. From there, I retired as a major. Then I went to Mount Morris Police Department, and I worked for them and the Illinois Police Department since I retired in 2013. My entire adult life is spent in the criminal justice system, and that's what our judicial court does here in Lima. We do vehicle traffic law, misdemeanors, felony verdicts, civil complaints, landlord tenant disputes, and that's what I've done for the last 40 years. I'm very familiar with the process. I have the experience, the training, and the knowledge, and submit to you that I would run the court with truth, justice, honor, fairness, responsibility, and accountability. I think that's what we need, along with compassion and caring for those people that are in the court. Not everybody that comes to the court is a bad person. We need to have a balance between justice and compassion and caring on the court. So that's the way I would do things. I appreciate you both if you're so inclined. I'm one of 3 candidates for the position.
That's it.
And as you can see, John could not be here in person, but he is here virtually. So we are going to hand the floor over to John at this point in time. I might have to adjust the volumes on the Jeep over there, but I think that, John, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank you all for coming out and caring enough about the people of our town and part of this process. My name is John Gates. I'm running for town supervisor. 8 years ago, my wife and I made the decision to bet online. We put down roots and raised our family here. We chose this community because we saw something special. Neighbors who look out for one another, strong values, and a place where hard work and common sense still matter. Now I'm stepping forward to serve this community because I believe it deserves leadership that listens, spends responsibly, and puts people first. I believe in fiscal responsibility and small role of Christian government. That means respecting every tax dollar and making sure our town budget reflects real priorities, not politics. My commitment is to ensure our town spending is focused, transparent, and directly benefits all of our residents. This includes our volunteer first responders, our fire and EMS personnel, who give their time, their skills, and their hearts to keep us safe. They don't do it for a paycheck. They do it because they care. But they're facing serious challenges. Aging equipment, facility needs, volunteers are getting burned out, and they can't meet those challenges alone. As town supervisor, I work hand in hand with the village and every stakeholder to find sustainable solutions that support their mission and protect both our volunteers and community. Now, despite the rather large signs that supporters put up, I'm not doing this for recognition. In fact, if I get nothing else on this campaign, I've already got something to move the world to. I've shown my children that local elections can stand up for what you believe matters. I've sparked their interest in how our town works and why it's so important to stay informed and be involved. And this is the kind of example that I want to set, not just for them, but for all of us. I believe in service over politics, results over rhetoric, and the kind of quiet, steady leadership that puts this town and its people first. If you entrust me with your support, I'll put my skills as a successful businessman, negotiator, and leader to work every day to make sure our community stays strong, safe, and accountable to the people who call it home. We don't come home, and now I'm asking for you to bet on me. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Bill, how do you say his last name again? Stromovich. Was listed in the paper as going to be here today. We don't know how the paper got that information because Bill had never agreed to be here today. So Bill is not here, and there are some other candidates that are not here. We are not going to go to what Bill will do and what the other candidates would do. We're going to talk about what we can do here with these candidates, and that's it, okay? We're not bashing anybody, we're not spreading any false information. If you know the information and you can share that, great. Okay? All good? Everybody? Okay, great.
So,
I'm going to ask an ambulance question first because I don't think anybody really knows the answer. Does anyone know the actual cost of paid EMS? 75K appears to be less than half of the expected cost for just the next year. What is the cost per taxpayer? Does anybody know the answer?
If you're
Put you to the microphone. You got 2 minutes. Is it like green or blue or green or orange?
To start with the first question, 75,000 is half of what Meg's initial plan was. That's also a dream scenario. If everything is wonderful and perfect, we get $150,000 and we have a paid person there every day of the week for 12-hour shifts, actually. That's that's not real, it's not realistic in her thoughts. The second part of it was how much costs per household. The village is already putting in their part. The ambulance will put in theirs. It'll be adding to the towns. And I think the estimate that Steve Warner called out after doing the math on the towns was about $22 to $25 per household. And that was at the last meeting. If you guys go to the Lima Live 365 on YouTube, you can watch it and hear Steve's assessment of how much per household.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else, any other comments on that? All right. I have lots of comments, or lots of questions, so I'm going to do my best to get them all in. So, the page on my board here are questions that people have emailed me, texted me, and whatnot over the past 2 weeks. So, some questions are one-part questions, some are two-part. The best guess is acceptable for today, with actual corrections in public response before the election, if possible, is basically one of the things that the people that gave me these questions asked for, or one of the specific questions about that. So, we're going to ask each panel member, please provide a good faith estimate of the total amount of money spent on this election campaign for your benefit, if you know. Okay?
So, just so we're clear, I'm going to start with Ron, and then I will rotate the first person to answer the question, just to be fair.
I think the total that has been spent from the Republican Party, I have not spent any money on my own. My name was added to the Republican Party signs, and I think it was around $2,200 for the total that the Republicans have spent on their advertising and postcards and signs.
So we have signs and whatnot there. Okay, thank you. That's not me.
$236.12. Self-funded.
Okay.
Self-spending about 500 any kind of mailings or anything were done that by other people, and I appreciate all of them, but I have no idea what anybody spent on their mailings.
So independent mailings were not, the mailings that were independent of your campaign. Okay, that's what thank you.
Same thing. Unfortunately, because of the coin toss, I did not end up getting any Republican funding. So out of my pocket, we're right around $600. Much like Chris said, there has been support in my name. I'm not sure what their receipt totals are as of this point.
Okay, so I think, John, please.
Yeah, I think I'm around $800 to $900 out of my own pocket. I know, the Spurgeon put the larger signs, that total was around $1,000, but they did that on their own.
Okay.
And the mailings, I really don't know.
So I think that covers the first, how many money out of your pocket, and then you how many. They don't know the supporters. How much money, if any, has been spent by a registered political party in general support of your campaign? So we only have one, right? But as Democrats, have they supported you, Amy, at all? You're self-supported?
I've made it self-supported. I have a number to have my $236.12.
Okay.
I think I can handle that.
Okay, I just, yep. Okay, so part two. Okay, go ahead, Chris, sorry.
I had the opportunity to take money from the Lima Democrats, and I'm not going to ask for reimbursement.
Okay.
Hey, Gary, I think there is one thing I should add. I know that bill has My animal is newer larger signs. I would assume those were made by the manufacturing committee, but I don't know that for a fact.
Gotcha. Yeah. So,
campaign finance is slightly regulated in
New York State Board of Elections and New York State laws. The obvious reason that reason is that excessive spending can lead to a quid pro quo, preferential treatment,
and the appearance of corruption in the political process. Campaign limits are essential in promoting political equality and maintaining public confidence for transparency and accountability.
are there any special interest groups or private parties that you have coordinated with to receive material support for your campaign? John?
Short answer, sure. There's residents who have reached out to, done things in support of our campaign. Yes. No special interest groups or anything like that. Just concerned citizens.
No, I have not had anyone reach out to me as a special interest, and that would be completely inappropriate as a judicial candidate in any respect.
I would think that the letter that went out was signed, and then any other things, residents did it on their own. Coordinated is.
No special interest groups, but similar to John, we have had individuals from the town reach out in support of our campaign.
No special interest groups other than the Republican Party.
Thank you. I believe that answers those questions that were given to me. So, a question for all candidates. Would you be willing, obviously judicial candidates, you're not going to be able to answer this, okay? Would you be willing to put $25,000 in the budget for the ambulance to pay for an EMT and driver to work 2 days per week from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to help relieve the strain on the volunteers? Would you be willing to put $25,000 in the budget?
Yes, but the question itself doesn't ask the most important part, which is how do you pay for that? I think right now we have to find the money in some way. Ideas were brought up at the public meeting. I don't want to get into any nastiness about any kind of wastes of money that are being. It's just, we have to find extra money. So, and yes, I would definitely fund the ambulance. It's one of the main reasons that I started campaigning.
Yes, is the short answer. If those numbers are correct, that Steve Werner has put out there, $22 to $25 on average. As a taxpayer, I think it's worth that increase a year to have a service like one ambulance in our town, covering town and village. But yeah, I definitely think, if we're elected, our swearing date probably pushes us back beyond this current budget, although I would be more than willing to look and see where we could reallocate funds. We have seen some things at the preliminary budget that we've looked at that maybe could be repurposed. I think a number I've thrown out there to individuals is like there's $7,000 that's being paid to the Livingston County dog catcher. When was the last time anybody saw a dog catcher, right? And when there is a lost dog through social media, we are the collective dog catchers, right? So people are more than willing to help and give their time to help find someone's lost, loved one. So yeah, I think looking at the proposed budget, if it is passed, maybe being able to reallocate some funds, that would then hopefully lessen that, minute tax burden on the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, similar to Adam said, I mean, for the 25,000, I think at this point, I found enough places where I think I could find that 25,000 and reallocate it to the 2026 budget without having to move to the taxpayer. For this test model, I believe that is in there. I found it, and we can do it, and it'll be at no burden, additional burden to the tax dollar.
Thank you. Next question. What is the cost to the town of Lima for the Livingston County EMS ambulance service? Does anybody know?
I don't believe it's broken out on what we pay to the county tax.
It is worth, one at a time. Well, we're going to start with that. We're going to be fair. We're going
John had actually said what I was about to say, so, sorry. I'll pass on to Chris now.
The ambulances going through the town is in the same line as the firefighters funding. I believe that it's $8,000 that they actually get from the town for the building maintenance.
We're talking about going to Livingston County, not our current ambulance. What would it cost the town of Lima to have Livingston County cover us? Is, I believe, the question. That's what is the cost of the town of Lima for Livingston County EMS service? Am I correct on that, Joe? It does have your name.
Right now, what is the cost to us?
What is the cost?
Are you talking cost currently or cost in the future?
Joe?
Present cost.
Present cost. Present cost. What are we paying right now for the mutual aid agreement? I'm assuming.
John, did you remember that?
No, I'm just trying to make sure I'm trying to forecast. Like I said, I don't think that's broken out anywhere that I've seen it, but I'm willing to do research and look for it.
Sign for it. Thank you, John. David, if you have something you want to say, write it down. Write it down and then we'll get it covered, okay? Okay, this is a question on the front and on the back. And it says, thank you for your introductions, and the panel have an additional 5 minutes to address the panel questions. If they need more than 2 minutes, we will make an assessment at each question, whether they can have more than two minutes. But other than that, we'll go on to the village board has provided Lima Volunteer Ambulance with the process of getting a 501c3 at no cost, which is about a $10,000 value, to the taxpayers, 95 to 97% completed. I don't know if that's a question or a statement. So it sounds like the ambulance is going to be becoming a nonprofit organization, and which I think there's different processes that they can go through to get some grant fundings and whatnot. So just apparently somebody wanted to throw it in. 2, board and supervisor candidates. How do you plan to increase transparency in Lima?
John, start.
John.
Okay, I think the first thing that I would do is I would welcome anyone to come to a meeting and have their opportunity to speak. I know that's something we started recently in the town board meetings, but prior to that, there was no public comment allowed. So I would encourage that. The other thing I would do, or that I would like to do, is have just a separate meeting that's not necessarily a board meeting, more like a community meeting where residents can come in, one night a month and voice their concerns outside of the 3-hour board meeting where the business of the town has to be done. I think those two things help increase communication. When there's more communication, there's more trust and therefore more transparency. The other thing we've got to do is clean up some of the line items on the budget so they're not confusing. Like the recent board meeting, we had travel expense line for the library is actually utilities. I don't know how the taxpayer can follow that without someone explaining it to them. So, I think things like that can get cleaned up and that increases the transparency and also let people understand what's happening.
There's only third board and
Transparency.
I've already started transparency with Lima Life. I broadcast all of the village meetings, all of the town board meetings. I've been to ag board meetings. I've been to planning board meetings. I don't think that anybody on our current boards have been to as many meetings this year as I have. I also think that inviting people to the town hall, not for a board meeting, but instead to actually speak to the board without the very, very formalized version would help a whole lot. Speaking to the residents directly is the easiest way to have transparency. Communication fuels transparency, and without it, then there is none. And that's really what we need. We need people that want to interact with our citizens and know what's going on.
Thank you. In addition to a lot of the things that have been said up here, I do agree with what Chris has done. I think that's a great way. And I'm a Christian education director at the Presbyterian Church in Niagara Falls, and we live stream all of our services now. So especially coming out of COVID, the technology is there. That should be a practice that I think all of our board meetings adopt, and it shouldn't be poor Chris's responsibility to come to every meeting. It is. He does have a life, I would assume. But yes, so besides that, my other two big things, much like John said, were trying to clean up and make the budget a little easier to read for everybody. And obviously an audit, I think, would go a long way. I know there's a cost to that, but at the same token, it holds people accountable, knowing where money is going, where it's funneling through, how it's being funneled through, I should say. And then there are grants that are audit contingent. So if we spend money on an audit, everything looks good and copacetic, that opens the doors up for us on additional funding that we might be able to capitalize on. And so I would think that would pay for itself in the long run. Thank you.
Dan, you're up.
I'm done. I need some clarification.
We're going to go back to the funding of the $75,000 for the ambulance.
$75,000 is for a paid program, 2 days a week, one driver, one BLS EMT, 12-hour shifts for a period of 1 year to start getting paid. Okay, so we're going to try to pay somebody, and I'm assuming they're going to go Wednesdays and Thursdays, because the emails that I get that were always still drivers or EMTs are always on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But, because I'm a driver for the ambulance, so currently kind of laying back a little bit from that, but that's what I can do. So I believe this next question is kind of piggybacks on what the last question was as far as transparency, but election season is going to be nice. It's obvious that people are passionate about Lima. We wouldn't be here if we were passionate about Lima, right? Okay, if elected, what actions will you take to bring the community good?
I
Yeah.
We're gonna start with Chris, with Adam on this one, then I'll go with Chris and then John.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think obviously elections are always ugly, or they become ugly. I would like to think that in the future, the approach of leadership within the town maybe would be less divisive, and hopefully we don't have a repeat of maybe some of the ugliness that is taking place during this election season. That being said, I think that after this there will be time for healing, because there are going to be raw emotions, people's feelings are going to be hurt. I've worked very hard specifically during my own personal campaign to not sling any mud, to throw anybody's name, under the bus. I would rather focus on my strengths as opposed to finger pointing at people's weaknesses. Usually the people who are doing the finger pointing are the ones that don't really have a strategy. So it's just not what I like to do. But I would love to see, I talked about, fundraising. I think fundraising, when people can come together over a cause, I think that goes a long way. It was asked, I think Tori asked me at one of our meet and greets earlier on, maybe some of the pet projects I might have as a town board member. I currently do one through Honey Falls for our church. We raise money for the kids down in Haiti. I would love to orchestrate a pickleball tournament amongst Lima residents. It would be great if we had pickleball courts here in Lima, but unfortunately we don't. So that's a long term. That's one of my 10-year goals.
Wait a second, Adam. I'm sorry, I'm going to take some of your time. Well, what the heck is pickleball? Pickleball is one of the fastest. Listen, Tom Brady and Brian Gronkowski have gone full on as far as their endorsement of pickleball. So if Tom Brady, and I'm a Bills fan, if Tom Brady will support pickleball and put money towards it, I think it's the least we can do is try to get pickleball courts here. But it's a combination of you play with paddles and a wiffle style ball over a really short net on tennis courts. So for anyone, that's like the nuts and bolts. Please go home, Google it, watch YouTube videos on it. You'll be addicted if you play it. And there's a pretty quick learning curve. And it's for young people can play it, retirees can play it. I've actually beaten a lot of 70-year-olds because it's all about ball placement and strategy. So I would love to see within 10 years pickleball courts at Tubbs Park. I think that would be great. But coming together. I was thinking you were eating pickles. Sorry. Feel free to do that while playing the sport. It does not involve actual pickles. So. I think coming together over a cause like an ambulance, where so as opposed to giving money to kids in Haiti, we could give the money that we all work together to raise to things like my EMS or other organizations within the town that could use them. So I think my biggest thing would be fundraisers. I won't ramble. Christopher.
I think bringing together the community, Lima Live is doing a lot of stuff as far as helping advertise the food pantries that we do have, the pop-up food pantries in other areas, especially now, and spreading events. Meetings that I'm speaking of would bring more people to the table so that we actually speak to one another, know what's going on before it becomes a volcano that's suddenly erupting and everyone is angry. I also think that we're a small enough town that it's time that we start moving away from parties. There is no reason for us to do that. I think that if we eliminate that and start choosing the best people instead of having any kind of national issues coming up, I can't do anything about what's going on in Washington, but I can make sure that your road is plowed if I'm on the town board. Things like that are what's going to bring us back together as a community. Worrying about Lima and not saying he's got a D or he's got an R next to his name. I think that we need to really just look at how divisive the whole system is just in itself.
John? Do you need the question answered?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm sure I listen.
Election seasons can be divisive. It's obvious that people are passionate about Lima. If elected, what actions will you take to bring the community together?
Well, I think like I said, I've done a pretty good job of trying to stay out of the mudslinging and the negative speech. And I've also got bipartisan support, I guess, if that matters in our little town, but I don't think so. I think it's a lot putting people before politics and hammering that home. Because I believe, from the people that I've talked to, you don't go to girls that nobody feel that way. They feel like it's a Republican or Democratic issue in our little town of Lima. So, but that's still more of just having those conversations and meetings and talk to people and make them feel heard. Sometimes in my work experience, you can have an upset property owner, an upset customer, but, if you let them say their piece, sometimes that's all they really want to do is be heard. So, if people are being heard, I think it turns down, they feel like they're being heard, it turns down some of that. Thanks.
I don't think that they can answer the judicial people can answer those questions. I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to ask another question in a different way, but it's kind of the same question. We have several community events throughout the year. Okay? True Lighting, Crossroads Festival, 4th of July, Pumpkin Festival, they're all community events. Would you add to that or support them or whatnot as far as bringing more events to Lima to other than pickleball, obviously, would be an event that would bring the community together. I'm just asking if there's any other events that you guys might be able to bring up that might help bring the community together or any other, it doesn't have to be an event. It could be, we're going to have a hayride, community hayride. I don't know, I'm talking. Sorry.
We're going to start with John.
John?
Yeah, I think the events that we have in our community are great. And there are a lot of people put a lot of work into it, and I've been very transparent. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a very good event coordinator, but I'm willing to do the work in the background and help anybody with the things that they want. That's just not. So that's the kind of skill set that I possess. Frankly, I've been married like my entire adult life, so my wife does all the event planning and telling me that kind of stuff.
So can you plan events for us?
I'm not going to sign them up there. I've been married 45 years. I know that.
Thank you. Christopher? Yeah, I was going to ask the others. Yep. Yeah, I don't think they can answer that.
There are certain things that they can answer and certain things they can't, so I'm not even sure the next one that I have for Amy is one that she can answer, so.
I think most of the events that we have right now, we need more people to take part in. We have events constantly through the library that could use more people to fuel them. We have events for the Historical Society that need as many people to help them as possible. I think that expanding what we have now can make it a much better experience for everybody involved. But spreading everywhere is very hard. And if we just help out what's going on now, I think that we can keep fueling and building what we have. I mean, Pumpkin Fest just gets bigger and bigger every year. and it's more and more people that are going to be needed for it.
So I mentioned marketing in my speech to open the debate or town hall meeting this afternoon. I think, you take a look at, the events that we have and the amount of tourism that it does bring to our town. I use Fairport as another example. Fairport has something going on like every weekend, right? Almost like to an annoying level. So I don't know if we need necessarily as many opportunities for town events as Fairport does. However, I would definitely like to look at offering more opportunities for things here in Lima, more activities that would bring in tourism. My hope is, we talked about visions on these questions up here. My vision is if this election goes the way I'm really hoping it's going to piggyback on what Chris was saying, I think there's going to be a rejuvenation that you see in this town. And I think there's going to be a huge drive for wanting to bring all of us back together. So my hope and my vision is we have people to support these events. I'm happy to take a lead on a few of them myself, whether it's pickleball. Another thing I've done in the past is because we do have some really great people in our town that do things behind the scenes, is maybe do something like an unsung hero type banquet where the residents submit names, a little blurb about why so and so might need to be recognized or should be recognized, and we open up space for venues like this. And we recognize people for the good that they do, right? Because, okay, I'll just sign that. Thank you.
Keep that. Somebody knows when I answer one question.
Actually, hand it over to Amy to get out in there again. I don't know if Amy and Ron can answer this next question, but I'm going to ask it and you can tell me how you want to answer it. What is your opinion of the New York State bail reform?
That would be speaking as to legislation, which would not be appropriate to speak to in this forum.
That's what I thought your answer was going to be, but the question was asked, so I had to ask it.
But going back to that earlier question about the not-for-profit status of the ambulance, who's charging $10,000 attorney fees for that?
I don't know where that money is coming from. That's not, nobody signed their name to the card. So I don't know.
I would like to reach out to Megan that that's a pro bono opportunity for me and my firm. The community should not be paying $10,000 for a not-for-profit.
That's the some candidates still rated maybe will reduce attorney fees. Which areas would you be reduced? Which areas will be reduced, and how will you assume? I'm sorry, I can't read the writing, but you can read it. Because there's words in between lines.
Some candidates indicated they want to reduce attorney fees. Which areas will be reduced? How would you assure a vulnerable town is not put in a position? How would you ensure that the town is not put into a vulnerable position? Think I got that right?
I'm skipping it.
Sorry, I'm going with that. I was asking.
That wasn't actually my question, it was an email to me, and my handwriting sucks. All right, I won't get it done. Some candidates indicated they want to reduce attorney fees. Which areas would be reduced, and how would you assure, the town is not, that's the way it goes. I know. So how will you assure that the town is not put in a vulnerable position?
We'll start with Chris this time.
Yeah.
Earlier, comments that I made has been about the highway department, labor disputes, having a labor attorney involved, and our normal attorney, that's about $600 an hour. They're sitting through our meetings for a 4-hour meeting the other night. That's quite a bit of money. Again, if the volcano had not erupted and if it had been stopped prior, then we wouldn't have the costs associated with the lawyers at the cost that it is now. We have to have them at public meetings because there's now public disputes. It should have been behind closed doors, and it should have been between the two parties, brought to us when it was ready to be brought to us, instead of spending money the way that it's being spent.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely value to having a lawyer present at certain events, but I think we just need to be mindful about, where we place them in the meeting. I think there's been village board meetings where maybe like the attorneys, don't get to speak their piece until like the end of a meeting, whereas they have to sit through 3 hours or so, and they're getting paid hourly. So I think they need to be there for some meetings, especially based on certain discussions. I think we just need to be smart about how we use their time. The water district, for instance, I think that had we been more diligent about how that was presented, I think it should have gone to a referendum vote far sooner than it actually did. There's attorney fees right there that we could have saved on. So, like I said, I think we just need to be smart about how we use the lawyers.
Okay, so you would be ahead of it, so you didn't have to use the lawyers.
Correct.
Okay, John. Yeah, so attorney fees rack up quickly, right? And, I think you can, for a lot of times, take notes and send them a list of questions from the meeting without having to pay sit there and listen to 2.5 hours of the meeting that they probably don't need to be present for. But as far as making sure that the town, doesn't make itself vulnerable, I mean, just for round numbers, our attorney fees went from $12,000 to $14,000 a year to now almost $56,000 a year. So, how were we running 3 years ago? I don't think we're getting sued then either. So, a lot of common sense comes into play. There are fine points of law, but overall common sense and doing the right things keeps you out of trouble. I know in my work, if you have to get an attorney involved, something went way wrong before. So, I think being proactive can minimize those costs.
Thank you, John. Something last week I will read this paper from the Livingston County Sheriff's Department. So I'm going to read it from top to bottom. Just let you know. Everything is on the page. So Livingston County Sheriff's Authority, Sheriff Matthew Bean, Under Sheriff, October 22nd, 2025. Sean Fowler. Enclosed is the information you requested regarding Lima EMS. Calls between January 1st, 2025 and October 20th, 2025. 447 EMS calls in the Lima district. 4 calls Lima did not have a crew. 1 HFL covered and 3 Livingston County EMS covered. There are no delays in this way. If we can further assist you, please do not hesitate to contact this office. Thank you. Maureen Douglas, Senior Typist, Livingston County Sheriff's Office, Records Department. I've been serving Livingston County since 1821, and there's a whole bunch of other little legal stuff. So I just wanted to, somebody else said we could read that, we read it. For supervisor and board candidates, there seems to be a lot of contention and the town government between multiple critical functions like the highway department, the ambulance, and the library. What steps will you take to bring these various groups back to a strong, constructive working relationship?
John?
Sure. The ambulance, it's gonna take, it's not the $25,000 isn't a permanent solution, right? I don't think any funding amount based on budget line, based on taxes is a permanent solution, because that can always be, changed from year to year at the discretion of the person creating the money. So, there has to be a plan, and I know we're working through the 501c3 process, but there has to be a plan for them to be long-term sustainable without depending on the political whims of our town. Same with our fire department, they've got to have, their capital expenses are outpacing our contribution amounts. That's something we can only fix. We have one of the lowest fire taxes, at least in the town of Lima, in the county. So I think that's something that we really need to look hard at and see if we value. As far as the highway department, I think that's something I can fix relatively easy. I've been on both sides of the negotiations, both on the one that called and organized an area, and now I sit on the other side of the employer. This isn't hard, but for whatever reason we seem to decide that we're going to start from scratch instead of looking at the agreement that they have in another town and making adjustments to that, which obviously if you're starting from scratch and your legal fees go up, and we're back to the lawyer cost. So I think those are some things as far as those two funds that can be handled pretty easily. The library, I really haven't seen, I know there's been concerns about the library, and I did read the supervisor's comment that said people need to use it. Understand that statement. I think take it out of context, people can read that as use it or lose it. But I don't think that was probably the intent, just from based on what I've seen of the funding. I haven't seen any real reductions in funding in the budget for the library. So I think it's important to keep that kind of in the context, but it certainly is on freeways on the radar. Some people that haven't spoken to any of them directly about it. So I can only look at the math and the numbers found at that point, but I do believe that library needs to stay in line. It does need to be used, but we got to keep it. There's just not that many places in our little community for people to gather, and that's one of the other ones that we have left, and I would like to see extended.
Thank you. Chris, you're right.
Yes, just so you know, I'm increasing the time for discussion every minute.
I think that bring everybody back together because we have to actually talk to one another. We've gotten to the point where trust is pretty broken, and I think that new faces and new opportunities will come if we're given the opportunity. The ambulance itself, there are people on the town board that are already serving on it. They have an opportunity to talk if they want to. The library, I think that the library needs our help as a community, people showing up, and also promotion. I think that with Lima Land, I can pop up and actually get in people's faces, in the places that they communicate now. We don't stand on boxes anymore and just yell. It's got to be online, and we have to actually take the opportunity to reach people and invite them and get them excited. We also we're going to have 1 hour meetings between the town and the village as two boards. I think that's just crazy. We can work better together if we actually are speaking to one another. It shouldn't just be the mayor and the town supervisor having the discussions. It should be in the public, and the community should see that our town and our village, which are both town, are actually together and moving in a direction together. It shouldn't be separate.
So I think as, supervisor and town board, our job is to hold each other accountable, and then subsequently, right, as town board members, we are then liaisons to various committees within the town, various organizations like the library, and I think that, it comes down to just good management. If the supervisor and the town board are working collaboratively, that management, good management should be a trickle-down effect. And like I said, we're holding each other accountable, and we can then hold committees and local organizations accountable as well, which should help to, add to the efficiency of how things are being done.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to read the question. I don't know if EMS is not included in the budget, how do you plan to allocate funds to ensure operation through 2026? I'm going to say my answer to this. There is money in the budget for the ambulance, okay? It will continue to operate through 2026. What they're trying to do with the extra money is get paid staff. Okay? 2 days a week. So the ambulance will continue to run at its current capacity and possibly miss a few more calls, but it's not going away. And if I'm wrong on that, any one of you candidates can jump in on me. Okay, you got your state, everything has to be written on cards, and we're not taking comment from the floor, I'm sorry, ma'am. So if you would like to write it down, I can answer it from here. All right, elected officials, or elected candidates, or candidates for election, whatever, if elected. What actions will you take to increase volunteerism in Lima?
This is my question, by the way. We start with correcting this to the justice. Okay, it's okay. 2 minutes.
We're seeing more, well, the groups that I've joined have seemed to increase numbers once somebody else starts talking about it, and that's the easiest thing. The board members are on different community groups and stuff, and the easiest way is to have them be as enthusiastic and spread as much of what's going on as possible. The simplest thing is the Be Well 250 there. I looked across the street, knew that my neighbor walked everywhere, every day. She's now the first one to complete it. It's just simple acts of showing people that you're excited, and once you're excited, that spreads. So I'm dipping my hands into the gardening club, the Rotary Club. I am talking to the Historical Society to try and get them as much support as possible. The library used my top hat for one of their events because I couldn't be there. We need people that are enthusiastic about learning. We need people that want to do things. And once you see that, it gets other people excited about volunteerism. they see the fun, they see what benefit it gives them.
So, obviously, you look at organizations like the EMS and the fire department, right, where those volunteers, maybe are on a pyramid a little bit more integral in the operation of the town. So, as far as those volunteers go, I think we should look at maybe some incentive programs. I know we have done incentive programs in the past for Lima EMS. And fire department, I believe, but if we could look to maybe increase those, make them a little bit more achievable for people, or at least more meaningful, I think we stand a chance of drawing more volunteers into those organizations. And then as far as if you're looking at, town activities like the Crossroads Fest, or Pumpkin Fest, or, any other fest that we might decide to host, what works at least in the church model with volunteers, because that's a lot of how things get done at the church level, is Lima residents inviting other Lima residents. So if there's people on planning committees, if there's already active volunteers, what statistically goes farther is when you guys invite other people. Because people want to help, it's just they don't necessarily know how to, so being asked to invite it is a very efficient way of drawing in volunteers.
Yeah, first to volunteers and the fire and some of the ideas that I've floated out there, kind of recruitment / retention incentives for the volunteers, the stipends, or some sort of training scholarships. I know there's property tax exemptions that are allowed in New York State. And then one of the other things that we were looking at, I was considering, not that it's something that I can do, shovel it up. It would take, the town and those working together to set up a LoSAP, which is essentially a retirement fund for those folks that retire, stay on. I know Harold Bubbles retired from the ambulance here recently after several years. It kind of works similar to a 401k based on their hours and time and service that they put in. So, like I said, those aren't things that one sole person can make a decision on. I think they're ideas that are worth discussing as part of the overall package of a sustainable system here in Lima. As far as the volunteers and the other committees, I know Jordan brought this up to you one other time, and I think I can see brought this up there. You asked one other time about committees and things. I think for me personally, I didn't know that there was spots that needed help, right? So I think educating people and putting those things out there, I guess it makes sense to volunteers that are slow, but knowing exactly what a person can do to help, and you have the skill sets to do that, I think increases people's willingness to jump in and throw their hat on it. So that would be my suggestion for everyone, no matter how the election turns out. Skill education, show what exactly you need help with, because I think there's people that have skill sets in our community that can help most times, but if they think they're right and they can handle, they don't want to step on those toes or anything like that. So that would be my suggestion. Thanks.
Apparently I was wrong. I must apologize for that. Apparently there is no money in the town budget for the ambulance. Okay? Mike just told me that there is in the town of Lima budget, all the money comes from apparently the village. And if we don't have people in place that can cover the calls, then the health department will get involved. So maybe we can run through 2026. I don't know. I don't know if it's a money issue so much as we need people to be involved to cover the calls, and if we can't cover enough calls, then the health department will get involved.
Just to add, there was a info session October 12th, I think it was, and there is a recording available if you would like information straight from that.
Okay. And that was what was trying to convey. I want to have truthful information out there, and I was wrong. The way it was presented to me was there was timeline involved, and according to my there is not timeline involved. Okay? I wanted to make that correction before we got any further. Question for all the candidates, except for judicial candidates, I believe. Ethics board. Do you support reactivating the ethics board?
We'll start the time because I'm not going to remember my first question.
Short answer is yes. I don't think anyone really knows yet. So I think it's just a matter of finding out volunteers or people that are on willing to do it. So yes, short answer.
Chris?
Yes, but right now, currently, by our rules, the only ones that can bring up an ethic complaint are board members. I want to relook at that because that makes no sense. It shouldn't just be board members that can call out other board members. It should be the community and the people that are voting. It makes no sense that the only oversight of the board is just the board. That's scary.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is benefit to having an ethics board. Like John said, making sure that people are aware that there is an ethics board. And I also think an important part to that is making sure that those on the ethics board have been trained or educated on what it means to be on the ethics board. It's not beneficial to get a bunch of people on there that just, maybe have a vendetta or have a personal beef against someone. That doesn't benefit anyone as a whole, especially as a community. So just making sure that we have people who are, non-biased on there, that, are looking at all situations evenly and equally, and have gone through necessary training, I think is an important piece.
Thank you.
So there was another part to that question. There's actually three parts to that question. So, and I believe that a couple of you have answered these already, so I'm just going to read the rest of the part. If you want to make further comment, we'll have time for further comments. Would you add minor residents to the list of people who could make referrals to the ethics board, and who would appoint the members of the board, and what would the qualifications be?
Everyone understand?
Any additional comments? I believe you guys have all answered that, but if you guys have any additional comments, we'll leave us a ton of time. Why did you attend this forum?
I joined this forum to put my name out there, to let you know who I am and what my qualifications are. And I feel that it's a non-partisan position and that everybody should know who we are and what we're for. So that's why I showed here and willing to answer the questions that I can.
I go back to be transparent, but you all know who I am, what I would like to do with the office, the experience that I bring to the table, that we need to start looking at people as people in this community. We are not red, we are not blue, we are Lima citizens, and I'd like to see us all view each other in that respect.
I think that every opportunity to talk to people is a great opportunity for a person that's running for a government position. I have been blessed to knock on 600 doors and have no real terrible experiences meeting anybody, so it's pretty awesome, and I've heard many different ideas, and it gets people involved, and that's what we need.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial for individuals, residents to come and actually get to meet the people who you guys are voting for to represent you. I think it's important that during, whether it's a local election, national level election, whatever it may be, it's important to have the opportunity to do your research and to actually know the people that you're voting for. In addition, because my name will not appear on the ballot as a write-in, I'm already fighting against the 8 ball, or behind the 8 ball, because, in order for me to win, it's a non-traditional approach. It's not difficult. If anyone after this that has heard me speak wants more information on it, it is available on the back table. It's just a simple 3-step process. We have a half sheet back there. So because my name will not appear on a Republican line or Democrat line, my name would have to physically be written in. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that if I am the candidate that you guys choose to vote for. Thank you.
The main reason that I chose to attend is that I'm trying to do, a couple of these, type of things back in the caucus. We had the ice cream social that we invited everybody to, and I know we had a couple at the park in Mississauga, and, it's pretty simple to me. There was enough people that were willing to come and listen to us speak, that we owe it to them to show up and speak.
Thank you, guys. Are you for or against improvements to the community other than infrastructure? If yes, how will you get funds?
Start with that, it's done.
Thank you. I think, obviously, fundraising, I've talked about how I feel like there's a desire of people to be giving and to help their community. So I think fundraising can go a long way as far as getting some of those funds that we might need that might not have to be a burden to taxpayers. And then, there's grant money out there that's available. I would use free money over taxpayer money any day. So if there are grants that we qualify for, that are sitting out there, it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort to at least, apply. And again, like I said, there are some that are audit specific, but if we could, get an audit done, and capitalize on some of those as well, I think that would also go a long way. And then, like I said, marketing, I've mentioned that a couple of different times now. We know that Lima's great. Let's work to make other people know that Lima's great. We have Positively Lima, and I don't know who, someone on the Facebook forum or platform made a comment that it would be nice that if, for politics, we had something separate. And so all Positively Lima was great things, right? So when people look up Lima and they see Positively Lima, they see all the positive things that we have to offer. It's people, doing community activities. It's, rainbows in the sky on a Saturday morning. It's, people posting photos of their pets and, the walks and races that we have. That's what I think people want to see. That makes people feel good. And so if we can make Lima look good, the way we know it is, I think that, we have a greater chance of getting people out there within our community wanting to help. So it would make then fundraising and, volunteers more accessible to then help capitalize on some of the funding that we could then in turn get from us grants and received out there.
Yeah, similar to what I was saying, anytime you can apply for any grant money, that's great. I mean, on the federal level right now, I don't know if that's pretty difficult. The administration that will change forever. There's still state grants, there's still things like that that you can look at, to help improve what we can, even if it's just aesthetically, when people come to town, they can see buildings that are fresh and painted, there's lots of things that can give a positive impact or a positive outlook on some of the strategy or other communities. So, but, you know, as though we get in the funding and getting businesses in town that we can support, you know, we like interest and stuff, open and close, relatively quickly. You know, so we gotta figure out a way to keep those, here, and that includes, you know, us as citizens supporting those businesses as much as we can. So, there's no easy answers, right, when we regulate money, but, fundraising and grants would be always the first step, and then we have to prioritize what we think is important, as a community, and then whether we want to fund those or not.
I think that, if anything, my campaign is showing that I'm extremely tenacious. I get into a project and I do not stop. I have started with just the filming of meetings, and then I've moved on to actually taking part in different organizations within the community because I saw that they need help. The grant getting is going to take effort, a lot of effort. It's going to take talking to people to get them on board because the grants are going to partially cover it, but then we're going to have to put in money to get the free money. You have to act. One of my main supporters has been John Loddick. You see LED lights, you see high-speed internet, you see sidewalks. He knows how to do these things, and I have learn things from him. It will be work that has to be put in, and to get these grants is going to be a lot of work. Fundraising is fine for a cycle, but you have to continue that then. It's very difficult to get people to give that $50 every year instead of finding that money through grants. Although fundraising is great, you just have to remember that it can't be sustained at a measure that will keep things going. It's a supplement to help spend less on it.
So, seeing as I got the question about the ambulance wrong, and the question was, how will you sustain it to be able to ensure that the ambulance will operate through 2026? I'm going to give each candidate a chance to answer the question. Okay?
Let's start with Chris.
The problem is not the money in the ambulance. The ambulance makes money to sustain itself because of insurance reimbursement. We have to send somebody to the hospital to get that money back. We have to transport them. So when we get a call and somebody can't get up in their front yard after falling down, we're not bringing them to the hospital. That's going to be us helping them home, getting them all set, and then we take off. The issue right now is actual people being at the ambulance. The volunteers at the ambulance, there's about 5 of them taking all of the shifts for weekdays because they do not have their full-time job during the 9 to 5 that most people do. So you have 5 of them burning themselves completely out. Once you get to a point where we start calling off to a certain percentage, then the health department is going to come in and tell us that we are no longer the best for being the EMS for this area. That's when Livingston County gets the contract and takes over. isn't enough money in the ambulance to fund fully paid people for the weekdays that they really need them. It's setting us up for failure if we do not do something now. It's not going to guarantee the 26 that they're still here. If we start losing calls and losing the money for those calls, then we won't be able to sustain ourselves, and it just all rolls into a big snowball that hits at the end and just blows up.
So to answer the question, I think long-term, right, the work that we should do to try to get more volunteers to help, I think that's going to take time. So if we're looking at just 2026 and making sure that we have funding there, I think the simplest thing to do would be to capitalize on the proposal that I think is being discussed right now about having paid part-time EMTs and drivers from a third-party organization. And where does that money come from? That money should come from us, if elected, reallocating funds from the budget and trying to, and what we can reallocate, if we do have to raise the tax burden, it would be ever so slightly. But as John mentioned, we looked, and it seems like we could probably reallocate $25,000 from the town's end to make sure that there's funding there for the ambulance.
So I think to answer it best as far as 2026 is involved, we kind of understand how the ambulance operates and maybe so I should feel free to correct me. Yeah. But right now they do run cash flow positive on their transports, so they put money in reserves each year. So what we're talking about with the $25,000 isn't necessarily sustaining the ambulance as it currently is, as much as it is trying to sustain it for the future and how we're going to cover the patients. Because, right, like Chris said, if one person of those 5 has a life-changing event, they have to move, they break a leg, what we're talking about is response times. If something happens to you in 2026, something's going to come to your door, right? It's a matter of you want to wait 10 minutes, or you want to wait 20 minutes, or, I don't know exact numbers, but I don't have them in front of me. So that's really what we're talking about as far as the $25,000 in this pilot program. To me, the pilot program is to get the data that we need to know that if paid staff model works for them, with the additional, additional calls that we can get, by supporting Livingston County, who, I think we had several calls in the county, because of our ability to staff. So, if we can offset some of those costs with those extra abilities, then we have some baseline, to know what those numbers are. We have a good idea, we know what our billings are. It's the costs and the expenditures and, how frequently we get those calls, that's kind of the variable in there to offset the cost of paid staff. So for me, the $25,000 is giving the opportunity to find that data and that information, and then we can all make an informed, intelligent decision on, what we want to do going forward as a community, and then, come to a referendum so that way it's stopped and stone, we can't change necessarily easily. So.
Thank you, candidates. Next question is what previous experience you had in planning committees, executive committees, large-scale planning, and group decision making. Where do you want to start? John.
Sure, as far as planning committee and those types of things, I haven't done that, right? That's not, never hit that fact. Executive committee, I sit on our company board. Same stuff, if you pay attention to Rochester Town, whatever next week, it's just Yeah, so I manage, roughly 100 million every day, that's my day-to-day operation. So, as far as boards and committees, you know, we have an executive board that comes in, we've got to deal with, and, you know, working with different customers and clients and those kinds of things, you know, there's never one person makes the decision situation. That's just not how it works in the real world. I don't think that's actually worked in the town and village point of view.
At 16, was pretty much my first management job. I've been in management almost everywhere. The biggest place that I've been in management has been a nursing home where we had about 50 employees underneath me, and I ran the entire kitchen, so I had diets of 160 different residents that all had different health problems. A majority of them could not swallow properly because of Alzheimer's. You had to start thickening all of their food because they forgot how to swallow. I have been in endless fields. As far as planning boards and anything like that, no, I have not had any opportunity for that. My actual experience in management is sitting in the front line of actually running places that have employees, and that's basically just working with people. I mean, if you're going to manage properly, you have to be able to talk to people and come to compromises when needed, and also be the one that brings the bad news when it has to come. And I have done it I'm 40 now. I've done it since I was 16.
So I mentioned before, I'm the Director of Christian Education for the Presbyterian Church in Highland Falls. And the structure of the church is there's committees for everything, almost to like an annoying level. But part of that is, we have the overseeing committee, which operates the function of the church, right, which is employees, all the committees, how worship is done. So same thing where, town supervisor and town board should be that session portion, right? And then we, as board members, are liaisons to all these various committees. And being able to, work with and collaborate with all the committees is important. The key is communication. I think that's the biggest stripe I have with working with a number of committees is lack of communication. And so making sure that you have the right people in charge of those committees is imperative to make sure that the correct and truthful information is then brought back to, the board and supervisor. I also spent time working at the HFL School District as a dispatcher of transportation. We had a number of committees there. We had drivers committees. We had a steering committee that I was responsible for being on and overseeing. And it's just, again, making sure that the people who are on those committees are doing their part and then holding them accountable and making sure that the correct information is brought back to the leadership of the organization. I've been through, as I worked in the school district, I've been through a number of safety and security trainings, been through active shooter trainings, been through management, risk management, threat assessment, all things that, I think are good characteristics of all a leader. What is your opinion of combining town and village into one government? Wouldn't that save dollars?
I don't care. Somebody, start with that.
I just gave the microphone back. That was asked to me when I was knocking on doors. I definitely think it's worth taking a look at. That being said, there are operations that take place at the village level that are different from the operations of the town level. And making sure that the residents don't take a direct hit because people are stretched too thin, I think is something that we need to take into account. There have been some other communities, I think Lyons, don't quote me on that, but I want to say Lyons was one of the towns that locally had tried to consolidate, and I think they've run into some headaches with the difficulties that have arisen from that. So, again, I wouldn't necessarily say yes or no today. I think, more homework and research would need to be done on if it's actually effective. Because, at face value, it looks like it would save money. But if it's going to cause more issues down the road and then be more costly in the long run, then obviously it wouldn't be worth doing. So I would say at this point, it's more research we need to be done on that as an option.
Yeah, certainly it's something that folks have brought up. It's just not something that I spent a ton of time looking into. I think that would be certainly a much longer process. But as far as whether it would save money, I don't know, I think that's debatable, right? Because the only thing that's really going to save money is efficiency. And, I don't think any of the elected officials, town or village, really make a living out of this deal and trying to get rich off it. So, you lose those few board members, but, I think there's, you would have to be efficient, but there are different needs for the folks in the village that are in the town. And, that's a balancing act that would probably take a long time of negotiation and two willing partners, right? I don't think it's fair for me to recognize town supervisor and say, oh, I think that's great. I don't take, the willingness of the village, also, right? So, that would be, there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't know all the inner workings to even say that that's even feasible, but I think if there's enough people that want to be explored, it's worth exploring, but I kind of balance of if everyone would be happy with that really happening.
Am I the only one that is in those, like, as a candidate? Yeah, alright, I think me and Bill are the two that are town board, are actually in the village. The village would come to an end if we combine our government. I mean, that's just how that would work. It would be the town line after that. It's pretty big. You would need a whole lot of time to look into what that actually entails. I pay taxes for both the town of Lima and the village right now, and that doesn't bother me, because that's where I chose to live. But dissolving the village, that's going to be a very, very hard hit to people who have come to expect so many services in their area. I mean, I have sewage, I have water. A lot of Lima's town does not have those two things. It's a totally different beast. I mean, we're running for town board, and it'd be wonderful for the town to have the village dissolved, but it doesn't really help the people of the village that are also members of the town. So it's really, really hard to say that I would be on board for that.
What role will your political party play in decision making? Don?
I think that's the best answer to that. Especially at this time, like I said, when we're all sending people forward, I really put people before politics, so that's not going to change me. I have no life, unfortunately, but for better or worse.
Thank you, Adam.
I would echo that as well. It's been stated up here, at the local level, maybe we don't even have political parties. We just vote on people's character, integrity, and drive. And I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, based off of, I mean, yes, I'm a registered Republican, but as far as how that will affect how I treat residents in Lima, that means absolutely nothing. If elected, being an elected official, I fight for everyone that lives within the Lima borders. And that means whether you're red or blue or in any other color, right? I will fight at the end of the day for the betterment of each and every one of you. So political affiliation will not affect how I do my job.
I personally have endorsed Adam and John Cates. I think that they're both the best candidates that I'm running with. Party-wise, it doesn't really matter to me, especially for my town. If I was going to be a state senator, maybe then it would be more of a thing. I am running for town board to help them, and that's the main thing. There's no reason to have party affiliations when we're talking about whether your neighbors have clean drinking water, whether your neighbors can flush their toilets. It does not affect whether trees are being removed properly so that our electricity continues. Why do I care if it's a D or an R next to your name when you guys are my neighbors and I care about you because you take care of me also? It's up to you.
Zero. I think I went on record already saying that for a judicial candidate, party has to be left behind. You need to look at the quality of the character. You need to look at the experience that person brings to the table. I would never want anyone in my courtroom to wonder if a decision is made based upon party politics. I think the best judges I've worked under, I've never known what their party affiliation is, because nothing they've done, nothing they've said, nothing they've expressed to me in a professional manner has given me any indication of political leanings, and that's really the way the courtrooms should remain. Courtrooms should be a politics-free, party-free zone, 100%.
I like the statement. It's a nonpartisan position, and we have to be impartial and treat everybody the same. So politics will have nothing to do with it.
Thank you, Ron. I have one statement here. I have no idea what it doesn't jive with the statement that was made earlier, so I'm going to read it. You guys can take it from there. It says the check was written for approximately $700 for the ambulance 501c3. What that means, where the check came from, I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Other than that, we have reached our 3 o'clock deadline for ending this event. We are going to give Ron and Amy, if they so choose, a minute or two to say something if they would like, because they haven't spoken very much about a lot today. But if you would like to make a further statement, either one of you, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody being out here. Saturday is a precious reunion for there for you as well. It's another afternoon together and giving me an opportunity to let you know who I am, what I bring to the table. I appreciate that, especially with the chiller conditions here this afternoon. But I hope to be of service. That's all I ask. If you let me, I'll take the opportunity. I'd like to be of service to the community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming out. I came out, as I said earlier, to let you know who I am. I'm one of 3 candidates running for 2 positions. Let you know my qualifications, and that I'd be honored to have your vote.
Thank you, Ron. We are going to have a forum at this point in time. The candidates are welcome to stick around if anybody wants to talk to them directly, other than John, of course. I hope your vacation is a lot longer than where we are right now. But other than that, we do have some cards in the back of the room, okay? If you have any ideas on how to improve a candidate forum for the future, write it down, let us know, and we'll do our best to do a better job of it the next time. And I can tell you one thing, I will not be the moderator of the next one. Okay? Okay? So,
thank you to everyone who came out here. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to Dan. I know it's not an easy job. Thank you to Christine. This is an amazing idea. I'm glad that you suggested it. And thank you